This week's stories all point to the same tension. Japan wants to grow its food exports aggressively, but rising costs and global rules are shaping how that growth happens. A takoyaki maker is scaling up frozen exports to ASEAN with a new factory. Japan's agriculture ministry is drafting a strategy to lead on international food standards. And at home, food makers are raising prices on more than 2,000 items in July as wholesale inflation hits a three-year high. Let's get into it. A Japanese octopus fritter maker is betting big on ASEAN, backing frozen takoyaki exports with a brand new plant. Okamoto Foods is targeting 10 billion yen in sales, a major leap from current revenue of around 1.1 billion yen. To support that ambition, the company opened a second factory in Hiroshima in May 2026. Here's why this matters. A target that's roughly 9 times current revenue isn't an incremental plan. It's a bet that frozen takoyaki can move from a niche specialty item into a high-volume export category. Building physical capacity ahead of demand tells you Okamoto sees ASEAN as a durable market, not a trial. For exporters watching the region, this signals that Japanese street food, frozen and standardized, is entering a genuine mass production export phase. Scaling exports like this raises a bigger question. Who sets the rules these products have to meet? That's our next story. Japan's agriculture ministry wants to lead on global food standards, not just follow them. MAFF released its draft international standards strategy on May 28, 2026. The USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service published a report analyzing it on June 9, and public comments on the draft were accepted through June 10. This is a strategic shift worth understanding. Japan has spent years pushing export volume, but standard setting is about influence over the long game. If Japan helps shape the international rules on food safety, labeling, and quality, its products gain a structural advantage because the global benchmark starts to look like Japanese practice. The fact that the USDA moved quickly to analyze the draft shows trading partners are watching closely. For exporters and importers, this signals that Japan is now competing on the rules themselves, not only on the products. But ambition abroad runs straight into a hard reality at home: cost. That's where our final story lands. Japan's food makers are raising prices on thousands of items in July as wholesale inflation surges. Food and beverage makers plan price hikes on 2,269 items in July. Reuters reports wholesale inflation is running at its fastest pace in 3 years. The underlying figures come from a Teikoku databank survey. This is the cost pressure behind every export story we just covered. When more than 2,000 items see price increases in a single month and wholesale inflation hits a 3-year high, the entire cost base for Japanese food shifts upward, and that flows straight through to overseas buyers. Anyone sourcing Japanese products for the summer season is now facing higher input costs at exactly the moment demand peaks. For international buyers and distributors, this signals that the cost of Japanese food is climbing, and summer season margins will feel it. Put these 3 stories together, and a clear tension emerges. Japan is pushing hard to expand its food footprint, scaling factory capacity for ASEAN, and reaching to shape the international standards that govern global trade. But at the same time, surging wholesale inflation and a wave of July price hikes are pushing the cost of that very growth higher. The overarching trend is this: Japan is moving from a volume strategy to a position strategy, competing on capacity, on rules, and on premium value all at once. The risk is that domestic cost pressure narrows the price advantage just as those ambitions scale. For businesses in this space, the takeaway is to watch margins as closely as you watch market access, because in 2026, both are moving fast. For the cultural story behind this week's market moves, head to Wayden, link in the description. See you next Monday.